Just start. Surfers Against Sewage has been going for some 30 years now, pretty much. It started in 1990, so actually 28 years. And I've been involved since the very early days as a member or an activist, a campaigner, a regional rep, all through my sort of career. And then I took over in 2008 as chief executive. The first 10 years of SAS, it is set up, as the name suggests on the tin, to campaign around poor water quality in the UK, particularly sewage pollution, or namely sewage pollution. The late 80s and into the early 90s, raw sewage was basically pumped out around the coastline of the UK, untreated in often long fall pipes out to sea, and it was causing all sorts of problems for water quality around the coastline. And this was a thing that was prevalent across the whole of Europe, actually. And so in 1989, the water companies were privatised. In 1990-91, we started to see big pieces of European legislation coming in through the Water Framework Directive, and the really key part of the change that SAS was able to sort of push on was the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, a big piece of legislation that bureaucrats in Brussels wrote that basically set out a time frame for water companies to have to, these newly privatised water companies, to have to invest in full sewage treatment. Yeah. And that program took about 14 years to implement. It went from 1991 right through to the sort of 2003-4 for this huge investment program of basically bricks, cement and concrete, building new sewage plants, putting new UV treatment in place to treat the sewage coming from our houses, and to build a new system to process it, to put UV light on it or microfiltration that meant that we stopped this raw sewage going out day in, day out. That was done. So we've gone in that time from what would have been 27% of UK beaches or English beaches passing the bathing water, the minimum European standards of bathing water quality, through to what is now 98, 99%. In Cornwall, it's actually 100% of waters passing the minimum European standards. Right. So a great journey. Yeah. One that in some ways masks some of the residual problems that it's left behind: combined sewer overflows, fluctuating water quality, diffuse pollution coming from our streets and our roads and our farming, all sorts of different things which still need work, emerging threats like antimicrobial resistance in the watercourse, all of these things. But a fantastic success story that was in part thanks to lots of high-profile campaigning from SAS and other environmental NGOs, but had this driver, this engine of legislation. Now, all really big changes come about because of legislation. If it hadn't been for the legislation, people could have made as much noise as they wanted to, but it was legislation that makes the companies do these things. Yeah. And so we're in other journeys where we're calling for legislation now on different things, and we've actually subsequently had successes where we've actually got the legislation and then created the change. And that's the holy grail for what we do today. Where can we ask for new legislation that will drive change? And that's the journey we're on today, particularly with plastics.
Well, yes, I was going to say, and of course, you have the beach clean in the spring, don't you? That which is not so far away now, I suppose.
Well, yeah, the Big Spring Beach Clean is one of our beach clean activations. It's the biggest weekend of mobilising beach clean volunteers in the UK. Almost 20,000 people join us at that weekend around beaches right across the UK to tackle plastic pollution, to take direct action to protect the spaces they love. And the beauty and uniqueness of SAS is really about that direct connectivity with the sea and the beach. It's people who really are passionately caring for the space they love, and that's now filtered inland, up rivers, into cities where people are doing exactly the same. And that's why we mobilise now the biggest collection of beach clean volunteers in the UK, some 35,000 every year, contributing about 150,000 hours of volunteering time directly to our beaches. This, of course, removes tons of litter, recycles lots of plastic, but isn't the ultimate solution. We can't pick our way out of the problem alone. They're really a signpost. They're a signpost to government, they're a signpost to industry, they're a warning shot to say, look, we're seeing this stuff on the beachfront, we're unhappy about it. there's this many people who are making a noise about it and taking action, and we need you to do something about it too now. And so this is really a way of saying, look, there's too much Coca-Cola stuff, there's too much this, that, and the other brand stuff on our coastline, and how do we stop that from happening? So they allow us to trace the source of these pollutants back upstream. And just as in 1990 we would never have advocated the solution being people with mops going to mop up sewage from the coastline, we said we need legislation to stop it getting there in the first place. We now need the same, and we've seen some success stories on this already. So Surfers Against Sewage campaign, long and hard on the plastic bag charge.
Yep.
Behind the scenes, before anyone knew about it. When that legislation came in, the first piece of legislation that SAS had ever campaigned successfully to get. So before that, we had never actually called for legislation ourselves. We had just pressed on legislation. We got the legislation, and that has already reduced the circulation of plastic bags by 9 billion. So a huge win. It's just been extended, so there'll be billion more bags eliminated for our environment. It means that we're finding fewer at the beachfront. Yep. And so that's a way that legislation has clearly and demonstrably shown a reduction in plastic circulation and impacts on our coastline. We're now doing the same with a bottle deposit system. This country uses almost 40 million plastic bottles every day. We only recycle just over half of those. The rest are littered, burnt, escape into the environment, or buried in the soil, which really, even in landfill, is just another way of polluting our environment. It's not a good thing to happen to this resource. And so we are calling for a deposit return system. Of course, this is a way of really enhancing recycling, of trapping plastic in the economy rather than in our oceans, a way of creating circularity, which in the countries where it happens, in Norway, in Germany, in many countries, they recycle almost 100% of plastic bottles. Yeah. And so we need to be there. We can't be looking at plastic bottles as a waste item. This is a resource. We mustn't squander this resource that we're pumping out from the ground, millions of barrels every day from the other side of the world, importing to create these products which we use for a few seconds, which then we chuck back into the ground without a second thought. And this is a moral injustice. This is a human rights issue, because what we're doing is polluting the future planet for the convenience of today. The cappuccino, the bottle of water, the single-use stirrer, a single-use spoon, all of these things are like an overdraft from the future, a plastic overdraft which says, right, actually we want the convenience so much today that we don't care about tomorrow. And that's what's happening. So we're bringing it all forward at this sort of in this crazy way, which is part of this fast-paced life we're forced to sort of live now, which says, right, we're so important, we're so busy, we've got to do all of this. And so we now need to find ways to decouple society from this single-use plastic addiction and find new delivery mechanisms, new packaging, new ways of doing what we do without creating this shadow of plastic across the whole of the environment that we need. We need fundamentally to exist. We need to protect fundamentally for the future. And so this is a nonsense that we're using this plastic at such a fast rate. And I would stand by the fact that despite the success of the sewage pollution issue that we've worked on, the plastic pollution issue is a much, much bigger and a much more complicated issue to solve. There aren't a set number of pipes that you can put a set piece of legislation on to control. You've got every part of society that is addicted to plastic. You've got multiple manufacturers. You've got multiple point sources for this pollution. Yep. And so there's a really complicated way that we need to deal with this, which is really needing a toolkit of lots of different solutions. So deposit return system to immediately start to create more circular economies whilst we wean ourselves off from these plastics and redesign plastics and make sure we're not using them for the wrong things. And this is going to be a long journey. But if 2018 is the year that we start to see real change in real legislation, I hope that in 14 years' time, we'll genuinely see a big change in the amount of plastics we see in the environment. And that, if that's a sort of a benchmark of what we did with our first piece of campaigning, I think that's a fair time frame.
Fantastic. You've always been, at the front of the curve on this in a way, haven't you? Because you had, for some time ago, is it the Turn on the Tap campaign? Was that
Yeah,
turn
well,
on tap?
we've had the Turn on the Tap campaign, which is now, we've seen the refill movement sort of growing. So
Yeah.
we've worked with Clean Cornwall down here. We've done lots of things that other charities are now coming on board with. We've had for many years our Return to Offender campaign, and we see Greenpeace and other charities wanting to do similar things or doing similar things to do an audit of the brands they're finding at the beach. And we piloted that, I think, first over 12 years ago.
Must be very gratifying, all that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great, and we welcome. This is a global crisis, as we've seen today. More news about coral reefs being strangled by plastic. We see more health evidence coming out about how much plastic is impacting, human food chain, the food chain right up to human consumption. And so this really is a global crisis, one that I've likened to, in the past in the press it's been picked up, to climate change. It is that big. Plastic emissions need to be controlled. We need to understand where we control them. We need to do that in the housing sector. We need to do that in the transport sector. We need to do that in the catering sector. We need to do it in every sector. Yep. We need to work out how we control emissions of plastics and the use of plastics and what people can or can't do with them. Because actually, it's not just the beach and the ocean which have brought this to life. It's every single part of our lives. You go into the street, you go onto your country field, they're all inundated with plastics. And the furthest flung parts of the world are suffocating in plastic. And that's not good enough. It's a moral outrage. There's people who will never have even consumed anything from in plastic, who will have tides bringing in our fast food waste onto their beaches, affecting their livelihoods, affecting their fish stocks, affecting their natural resources that they need to conserve for the future. And so that is not fair. That's as unfair as climate change from emissions in the Western world affecting, developing countries.
So is this